There is a moment in every person's life when a quiet realization appears, not during a crisis, not during a celebration, but in the stillness between thoughts. You realize that no matter how hard you work, no matter how carefully you plan, life keeps touching you where you are most vulnerable. A comment that stays in your head for years, a failure that replays itself long after it's over, a loss you never fully recover from. And the most disturbing part isn't what happened, it's how deeply it still controls you. Your mood, your confidence, your peace. Now here's the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. Life is not attacking you. People are not ruining you. Circumstances are not breaking you. What truly hurts you is invisible. It's the story you tell yourself about what happens. 2,000 years ago, a man born into slavery understood this better than almost anyone in history. His name was Epictetus. He had no wealth, no political power, no physical freedom. Yet emperors listened to him, generals studied him, and centuries later, his ideas would quietly shape the minds of leaders, psychologists, and thinkers across the Western world. Epictetus taught something that feels almost dangerous in its simplicity. Nothing outside your mind has the power to disturb your inner life unless you give it permission. And once you truly understand this, once it moves from an idea into lived experience, something irreversible happens. Life loses its grip on you. That is what this video is about. Not motivation, not positivity, not pretending pain doesn't exist, but learning how to become psychologically untouchable in a world that profits from your anxiety. If you stay with me until the end, you won't just understand Stoicism intellectually, you'll feel it working inside you. Because Stoicism is not about controlling life, it's about reclaiming ownership of yourself. And that changes everything. Most people believe peace comes from arranging the world correctly. The right job, the right relationship, the right reputation, the right outcome. The Stoics believed the opposite. They believed peace comes from understanding a single, brutal distinction. What is up to you and what is not? Epictetus opens his Enchiridion with words so direct they almost sound offensive to modern ears. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. Not partly, not sometimes, but fundamentally. Your opinions are up to you. Your judgments are up to you. Your desires, aversions, and actions, these belong to you. Your body, reputation, wealth, and how others treat you, these do not. And the tragedy of most human suffering comes from confusing the two. We try to control what cannot be controlled and neglect mastery over the only thing that can. This confusion is why intelligent, capable people feel fragile, why success doesn't bring peace, why approval never feels permanent. Stoicism begins by reversing this mistake. It doesn't promise a life without pain. It promises a mind that cannot be enslaved by pain. Let's begin with the first principle: firm purpose. Imagine boarding a ship with no destination. You may enjoy the breeze for a while, you may admire the horizon, but the moment the storm comes, panic sets in. Without direction, every wave feels like an emergency. This is how most people live. They react, they drift, they chase relief instead of meaning. Epictetus believed that without a firm inner purpose, the mind becomes defenseless. Not because life is cruel, but because the mind has nothing stable to return to. A firm purpose is not a goal. It's not a job title. It's not a lifestyle aesthetic. It is a commitment to who you choose to be, regardless of circumstances. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that a person should wake each morning asking, "What is the work of a human being today?" Not what do I want, not what feels good, but what aligns with reason, virtue, and responsibility. For the Stoics, purpose was ethical before it was personal. To act with integrity, to respond with courage, to think clearly, to serve the common good. When this becomes your internal compass, life changes shape. Obstacles stop feeling personal. Setbacks lose their drama. Criticism becomes background noise, because your sense of worth no longer depends on outcomes. It depends on alignment. And alignment is always available. A firm purpose acts like gravity. It pulls you back to center when emotions try to scatter you. But it must be cultivated deliberately. Purpose does not appear through inspiration. It is built through reflection. Ask yourself, what do I refuse to compromise, even under pressure? What values do I want visible in my behavior, not just my words? If everything external were taken from me, who would I still be? These questions are uncomfortable. That's why most people avoid them. But without answering them, you remain exposed. The Stoics believe that clarity of purpose is the first form of freedom, because when you know what you stand for, fewer things can push you over. Which leads us to the second principle: guarding the mind. Epictetus said something that still unsettles people today. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. This means that between an event and your suffering, there is a thought, and that thought is optional. Modern psychology would later confirm this. Cognitive behavioral therapy rests on the same foundation. Your emotional reactions are not automatic truths. They are interpretations. Someone disrespects you. Your chest tightens. Anger rises. But what actually happened? Sound waves hit your ears. Light reached your eyes. Everything else was added by your mind. The Stoics were obsessed with this insight because it revealed a hidden lever. If you can train your mind to pause before accepting impressions, you reclaim power. Guarding the mind does not mean suppressing emotions. It means interrogating them. Is this thought accurate? Is it useful? Is it within my control? Most mental suffering collapses under calm questioning. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Think about how much of your anxiety exists in the future. How much regret lives in the past. How little of it exists in the present moment. Guarding the mind means refusing to let every thought move in unchallenged. You don't let strangers walk into your home uninvited. Yet most people allow random thoughts to occupy their mental space all day long. News cycles, social media, other people's expectations. The Stoics practiced mental boundaries long before the term existed. They chose carefully what deserved their attention. And attention, as we now know, is life itself. Where you place it determines your emotional reality. This is why Epictetus emphasized daily practice, not philosophy as entertainment, but philosophy as discipline. You train the mind the way you train the body, with repetition, with patience, with humility. The result is not emotional numbness, it is emotional authority, which prepares us for the third principle, handling criticism. If you want to know how free a person is, watch how they respond to criticism. Most people collapse or retaliate. Their identity is too closely tied to external approval. Epictetus taught that criticism reveals more about the speaker than the target. If someone insults you for something you know is false, why be disturbed? If they criticize something true, why not learn? In either case, your peace is optional. This does not mean becoming indifferent or arrogant. It means becoming grounded. When your self-worth is anchored internally, opinions lose their ability to wound. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that people act according to their understanding. If their understanding is flawed, anger is unnecessary. Criticism becomes information, not an attack. This mindset is especially relevant in modern American culture, where identity is often publicly negotiated. Likes, comments, metrics. The Stoic refuses to outsource self-respect. They listen carefully. They adjust when needed, but they do not tremble, because their values are not crowdsourced. This requires humility and strength, which leads us naturally to the transformation of offense. But before we go there, pause for a moment. Notice what's happening internally as you listen. If something feels uncomfortable, that's not a problem. That's the work. Stoicism was never meant to soothe you. It was meant to fortify you. Offense is one of the most misunderstood forces in human psychology. People talk about it as if it were something done to them, as if it were injected, as if it arrived fully formed and unavoidable. The Stoics saw it differently. They understood that offense is not an event. It is an internal decision. Epictetus was blunt about this. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit. That sentence alone can feel unsettling, even insulting, because it removes the comfort of blame. But it also removes helplessness. Transforming offense is not about pretending you don't feel pain. It's about refusing to let pain decide who you become next. When someone insults you, betrays you, dismisses you, or disrespects you, something very specific happens. An impression appears. And that impression whispers a story. You are diminished. You have been wronged. You must respond. Stoicism teaches you to pause right there, before the story hardens, before identity gets involved, before emotion takes control. Marcus Aurelius described this moment as the dividing line between freedom and slavery. The moment you say, "This is only an impression, not a fact," that pause is everything, because once you insert reason, you regain authorship. You can ask, is this person acting from clarity or confusion? Does this offense threaten my character or only my ego? Will reacting improve the situation or simply discharge emotion? Most offenses lose their intensity under scrutiny, not because they were harmless, but because they were misinterpreted. Seneca wrote that anger always begins with the illusion of injury. Take away the illusion, and anger has nowhere to stand. This is especially powerful in modern American culture, where offense has become a form of identity. People collect grievances, they rehearse them, they broadcast them. The Stoic chooses a different path, not silence, not submission, but sovereignty. They respond when reason demands it. They remain silent when ego demands reaction. And over time, something remarkable happens. You stop feeling like life is happening to you. You start feeling like you are happening to life. Which brings us to fear and shame, two of the most powerful invisible governors of human behavior. Fear is not the presence of danger. It is the anticipation of loss. Shame is not the recognition of error. It is the belief that error defines you. The Stoics dismantled both. Epictetus taught that fear arises when we tie our sense of self to outcomes, reputation, success, approval, security. The moment those become essential to your identity, fear appears, because anything essential can be threatened. Stoicism doesn't eliminate fear by bravado, it dissolves it through clarity. Ask yourself, what am I actually afraid of losing? If the answer is something external, you've identified the source of your anxiety. The Stoic solution is not to stop caring. It is to care correctly. Care deeply about virtue. Care deeply about reason. Care deeply about character. Care lightly about everything else. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that death, loss, and humiliation are natural events, not injustices, not personal attacks. Natural. And what is natural cannot be shameful. Shame thrives in secrecy and distortion. Stoicism exposes it to daylight. You are allowed to fail. You are allowed to be wrong. You are allowed to learn. What you are not required to do is carry past mistakes as permanent identities. Seneca warned that many people punish themselves long after life has moved on. They replay moments that no longer exist. They rehearse judgments that no one remembers. Stoicism teaches self-forgiveness without self-indulgence. Learn, correct, release. Fear and shame weaken when faced directly, which leads to one of the most misunderstood Stoic practices: anticipating obstacles. At first glance, this sounds pessimistic. Why imagine problems before they occur? The Stoics would answer, because surprise is the ally of panic. Epictetus encouraged students to rehearse difficulty mentally, not to suffer in advance, but to reduce shock. When you expect ease, difficulty feels unjust. When you expect difficulty, it feels normal. This shift alone changes your emotional response. Modern psychology calls this stress inoculation. The Stoics called it wisdom. Imagine preparing for a major presentation. Instead of assuming everything will go perfectly, you calmly consider, what if technology fails? What if I forget a point? What if someone challenges me? Not to catastrophize, but to prepare. When the mind has already walked the terrain, it does not freeze. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every morning. He would remind himself, today I will encounter interference, ingratitude, arrogance, disloyalty. Not as complaint, as calibration. By doing this, he stripped events of their power to shock. You cannot control whether obstacles appear, but you can control whether they feel like betrayal. Anticipating obstacles builds emotional resilience. It trains the mind to say, this too belongs. And when something belongs, it no longer feels hostile. This is the quiet power of Stoicism. No drama, no denial, only readiness. Which leads us to inner strength. Inner strength is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition. It is visible only under pressure. Epictetus said, "Do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go well." This is not passivity, it is alignment. Inner strength comes from accepting reality without resentment. Resentment is the belief that life owes you something. Stoicism rejects this belief entirely. Life owes you nothing, but it offers you material, and what you build from that material is up to you. Inner strength grows when you stop arguing with what already exists. You conserve energy, you gain clarity, you act effectively. This is why Stoicism is not withdrawal from life. It is engagement without emotional leakage. The Stoic still cares, still works, still loves, but without desperation, because desperation comes from attachment to outcomes. Inner strength comes from commitment to process. You show up, you act with integrity, you accept results. This mindset transforms how you experience failure. Failure becomes feedback. Loss becomes information. Pain becomes training. Not because pain is good, but because resistance is optional. Which brings us to restraining actions. Most regrets are not caused by circumstances. They are caused by reactions. Words spoken too quickly, decisions made emotionally, actions taken without reflection. Stoicism inserts a pause. That pause is the space where freedom lives. Epictetus said, "Make it your study to confront every harsh impression with the words, 'You are an impression, and not at all the thing you appear to be.'" This is restraint, not suppression, not avoidance, but conscious choice. Restraint means you do not let emotion drive the vehicle. Emotion can sit in the passenger seat. It can speak, but it does not steer. This is especially critical in conflict. When emotions rise, clarity drops. Stoicism restores balance by slowing response. Silence becomes a tool. Delay becomes wisdom. The Stoic understands that not every urge deserves expression. In a culture that celebrates impulsive authenticity, this feels radical, but the results speak for themselves. Fewer regrets, stronger relationships, greater self-respect. Restraint is not weakness, it is mastery, and mastery leads naturally to acceptance. Acceptance is not surrender. It is the end of unnecessary resistance. Epictetus taught that suffering comes from wanting reality to be different than it is. Acceptance removes that friction. When something happens, the Stoic asks, "Is this within my control?" If yes, act. If no, adapt. This clarity saves enormous energy. Consider how much mental effort is wasted on wishing. Wishing people were different. Wishing the past had changed. Wishing outcomes had gone another way. Stoicism redirects that energy into action and peace. Acceptance does not mean liking what happens. It means not fighting reality. Once reality is accepted, intelligent action becomes possible. This is why acceptance is the foundation of resilience. It is not the end of effort. It is the beginning of effectiveness. And all of this culminates in the final principle, living according to nature. For the Stoics, this did not mean living in the wilderness. It meant living according to reason, according to truth, according to human nature as rational and social beings. Marcus Aurelius believed that humans are designed to cooperate, to act justly, to use reason as their highest tool. Living against this nature creates inner conflict. Living in alignment creates peace. To live according to nature is to stop pretending, to stop performing, to stop outsourcing identity. It is to accept who you are and act accordingly. This includes simplicity, moderation, integrity, not as moral posturing, but as psychological hygiene. A simple life reduces dependency. A moderate life reduces craving. An honest life reduces internal tension. The Stoics understood that complexity breeds anxiety. Clarity breeds calm. Living according to nature also means accepting impermanence. Nothing lasts. No status. No feeling. No condition. This is not depressing. It is liberating, because what cannot be held cannot enslave you. And now, as we approach the final movement of this journey, something important must be said. Stoicism is not about becoming unfeeling. It is about becoming unbreakable, not rigid, but resilient, not detached, but anchored. If you have stayed with this video this far, it says something about you. It suggests you are not satisfied with shallow answers. It suggests you are willing to examine yourself honestly. That is rare. And if this way of thinking has given you even a moment of clarity, consider this. Ideas only live when they are shared. Wisdom only deepens through dialogue. If you choose to stay connected to this channel, you are not just subscribing. You are entering an ongoing conversation about mastery, meaning, and inner freedom. A thoughtful comment is not a favor to the algorithm. It is a contribution to that conversation. And if there is one person in your life who would understand this way of seeing the world, send this to them. Not to convince, but to reflect together. That is how philosophy stays alive. There is a quiet moment that comes after understanding. Not excitement, not relief, but recognition. You recognize patterns in your own life. Moments when you surrendered control of your inner world without realizing it. Moments when you believed peace lived somewhere outside of you. The Stoics called this moment awakening, not in a mystical sense, but in a psychological one. Epictetus warned that most people live as if their mind were rented property. Anyone can walk in. Anyone can rearrange the furniture. Anyone can leave damage behind. Stoicism begins when you decide to take ownership. Ownership of perception. Ownership of judgment. ownership of response. This is not easy, but it is simple. And simplicity, the Stoics believed, is the highest form of sophistication. Let us return briefly to the foundation: control. Not control over life, control over yourself. Every Stoic principle we have explored points back to this single axis. Firm purpose anchors you. Guarding the mind protects you. Handling criticism frees you. Transforming offense empowers you. Facing fear and shame humbles you. Anticipating obstacles prepares you. Inner strength stabilizes you. Restraint refines you. Acceptance liberates you. Living according to nature completes you. None of these are abstract. They are practical disciplines, but they only work if practiced. Marcus Aurelius did not write the Meditations to inspire others. He wrote them to remind himself, because even emperors forget. Even philosophers struggle. Stoicism does not assume mastery. It assumes effort, daily effort. This is why the Stoics emphasized routines: morning reflection, evening review. Ask yourself each morning, what kind of person will I be today? Ask yourself each evening, where did I act with reason? Where did I surrender it? This is not self-judgment. It is self-calibration. Without reflection, habits harden. With reflection, character evolves. Modern life pulls attention outward. Stoicism pulls it back in. Not to isolate you, but to strengthen you. Consider how often your mood depends on something you do not control. A message, a reaction, a result. Stoicism does not ask you to stop caring. It asks you to care wisely, to invest emotion where it has return. The Stoics believed the most tragic human error was confusing preference with necessity. You may prefer comfort, but you do not need it. You may prefer praise, but you do not require it. You may prefer certainty, but you can live without it. Once you internalize this distinction, anxiety loses its leverage. You stop negotiating with fear, because fear only negotiates with dependency. This is why Stoicism has survived wars, empires, revolutions, and technological shifts, because human psychology has not changed, only its disguises. Social media amplifies comparison. Stoicism dissolves it. Consumer culture inflames desire. Stoicism disciplines it. Political outrage feeds division. Stoicism restores proportion. This is not withdrawal from society. It is participation without contamination. A Stoic does not become passive. They become precise. They choose their battles. They choose their words. They choose their reactions. Precision is power. Epictetus often reminded his students that philosophy is not a performance. If your philosophy does not change how you speak under pressure, it is decoration. If it does not change how you treat people when no one is watching, it is theater. True Stoicism appears in moments no one applauds. When you remain calm under provocation, when you act ethically without reward, when you accept loss without bitterness. These moments accumulate. They shape your inner posture, and inner posture determines how life feels. The Stoics understood something modern culture struggles to accept. Happiness is not a mood. It is a byproduct. It emerges when you live in alignment between thought and action, between values and behavior, between effort and acceptance. When these align, life becomes quieter, not easier, but clearer. Clarity reduces suffering, because suffering thrives in confusion. Seneca wrote that a person who has made peace with fate is free, not because fate is kind, but because resistance is gone. Peace is not found by eliminating hardship. It is found by eliminating the belief that hardship should not exist. This is a difficult truth, but it is also a liberating one. Once you stop asking life to be fair, you start asking yourself to be strong. And strength, unlike fairness, is within reach. Let us talk briefly about relationships. Stoicism is often misunderstood as emotionally distant. This is false. The Stoics valued human connection deeply, but they rejected emotional dependency. They believed love should be rooted in goodwill, not possession, that care should be generous, not anxious. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that every person he encountered was acting according to their understanding. This fostered compassion without naivety. You can care without clinging. You can love without losing yourself. Stoicism teaches boundaries without bitterness. It allows closeness without collapse. This is especially relevant in a world where identity is often fused with relationships. The Stoic remains whole, not isolated, but integrated, and integration is the hallmark of psychological health. The Stoics also understood mortality, not as a dark obsession, but as a clarifying lens. Memento mori, remember you will die. Not to depress, but to prioritize. When you remember impermanence, trivialities lose importance. Ego relaxes, grudges soften, presence sharpens. Death, paradoxically, teaches you how to live, not recklessly, but intentionally. When time is finite, attention becomes precious. And Stoicism is ultimately a philosophy of attention, where you place it, how long you hold it, what you refuse to give it to. Attention is your most valuable resource because it shapes your inner life. The Stoic guards it fiercely, not out of fear, but out of respect for consciousness. Now, let us return to you. If you are still listening, it means something resonated. Perhaps you recognized your own struggles in these principles. Perhaps you felt a shift in how you interpret difficulty. That shift is the beginning. Stoicism is not something you adopt once. It is something you return to again and again. When you fail, when you succeed, when you are confused, when you are confident. It meets you where you are, and it asks only one thing: responsibility. Not for the world, but for yourself. That is the Stoic contract. If you accept it, life does not become predictable, but you become reliable. Reliable to yourself, and that is rare. Now, before we close, consider this. Most content asks for attention. Very little asks for reflection. If this video created reflection, it has already done its work. But philosophy grows stronger when shared thoughtfully. If you choose to support this channel, do so not out of impulse, but intention. A subscription is not loyalty. It is a signal that this conversation matters. A like is not validation. It is a way of helping ideas reach minds that are ready. And if there is one person in your life who values depth over noise, send this to them, not to persuade, but to explore together. Leave a comment, not to agree or disagree, but to think. A sentence that captures what stayed with you. Because those comments are not for the algorithm. They are for the people reading them. And for the author who spent countless hours studying these texts so that ancient wisdom could speak clearly in a modern world. Stoicism does not promise happiness. It offers something better: stability, clarity, freedom. And once you experience that freedom, nothing external ever feels quite as powerful again. Stay grounded, stay awake, and above all, stay responsible for your inner world. That is where your true life happens.